want you to think about your life like this balloon. This balloon represents your life. And all of your responsibilities in your life, all the activities in your life are represented by the air inside this balloon. So when you first start off in life, you don't have a lot of responsibilities as a young kid, right? You got a lot of activities as you kind of get into that preschool age. But there's something that all parents know they need to do for kids that for whatever reason, as we grow into adults, we just kind of forget. And that is that kids need to play hard, but they also need to rest hard. Right? There needs to be this give and take of pressure and release. And so when kids are in preschool, let's kind of jump to preschool, kindergarten age, right? There's really no responsibilities. This is what life looks like. Lots of margin, lots of flexibility. You go to preschool, you might spend a few focused minutes learning the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, right? Then after you learn for a little bit, they let you go outside for something called recess, and you get to play a little bit. But then what's beautiful about that stage of life and the way that we set up learning environments is that after you play outside, you've learned, you've played, they take you back inside and they turn out the lights. They put on soft music in the background. And what do kids in preschool and kindergarten get to do? They have what? Nap time. Don't you wish you had that on your job now? Right? Like after you finish a big project and you work hard, your boss comes in, turns off the lights, plays some music. You go, man, you work so hard, you should probably rest a little while, right? But with kids, we do this. And in nap time, there's this opportunity to rest. There's this release. That's what release sounds like, by the way. And so here's the thing. If this is a child's life, not a lot of responsibility, but this regular rhythm of kind of, play, learn, rest, none of you are worried about this balloon popping right now, are you? Because look, there's a lot of flexibility here. There's a lot of extra. There's a lot of margin with this balloon. But here's what happens. That principle that we know kids need, play hard, rest. We go into adulthood and we forget about it. As we grow into adolescence and we keep moving on to adulthood, we think that, naps and rest are for babies. And adults, we just suck it up. We just pile it on. We just keep pushing and going and going and going. And so we go into grade school and there's a little more pressure. Not a lot, but a little bit. Middle school, a little bit more, like the busyness increases, right? The activity level increases a little bit. My guess is if we all had to pinpoint, when was the first time you maybe felt, stressed? When was the first time you felt like maybe you were overextended? For most people, it starts in high school, right? Like my oldest is a high schooler. The amount of homework they get is crazy sometimes. They're in sports, activities, music, drama. Maybe in high school you went and got your first part-time job. Right? The activity level is increasing, the complexity of your life, the busyness of your life is increasing. Then you graduate high school and you join the workforce full-time or the military full-time or you go to school full-time. Right? The complexities of your life just increased. Maybe during that time of your life, you also got, you're working a little bit. You get a crazy roommate or two. Right? Like that happens. Then, you get in a significant relationship, then another significant relationship, then another. Then you find one that you're like, you know what? You get this bright idea. Let's get married. Your life just got way more complex, didn't it? Marriage is awesome. It can be great. But it adds a level of busyness and complexity to your life. And then, you're in your career, you're working, you're married, there's busyness, there's complexity, and then you get the bright idea, let's have kids. How many of those should we have? 1, 2, a couple years go by, life's complex, then you have a whoops baby. Whoa, hey, looks like we got 3, right? And all of a sudden, that life that was pretty easy, that felt good, there weren't a lot of stresses. Are you starting to feel the stress right now? Some of you are worried. You're like, how many more can they go, right? And here's the thing. The reason is because, man, there's not a lot of extra space here. There's not a lot of margin here. And then those kids start to grow up and we think, well, they gotta be a part of more things than I was a part of, you know? You want your kids to have more and do more than you. And so you put them in karate, right? Like soccer, right? T-ball. Woo. Right? And then like as they get older, you're like, oh, I got to get them on that really good travel team. Woo. Right? And it's like, and we just push ourselves to the max. And my guess is, you know when you feel this way, right? Some of you feel this way right now. You know, if there's anything else, if somebody else tries to do something, say something, they're going to be like a sharp point in your life, right? Because you are at your max. You're stretched to capacity. And because most of us don't live healthy rhythms of work hard, play hard, work hard, rest well, because we don't do that, here's what ends up happening. Either we add one more thing and it explodes. Oh, there it went, right? Either we try to add one more thing and it just explodes on us. And that's the way life can be, but that's not the way Jesus intends for you to live. Today, I want to talk to you about how Jesus offers us a better way to live and love when it comes to managing all the stresses and pressures and busyness of this modern world that we live in. This series, Life Plus, is based on a theme verse, these words and promise from Jesus. It's found in John chapter 10:10. Everybody grab that outline out of your program, which, by the way, now you know why I was wearing the glasses, right? Save the eyes in case it popped when I was blowing it. Life Plus comes from these words of Jesus in John 10:10. This is the kind of life that Jesus wants for you. It's the life that he wants for me. These are his words in John 10:10. Jesus said this, I have come to give you everything in abundance, more than you expect. Life in its fullness until you, everybody say that last word out loud, overflow. Jesus wants your life to overflow, not explode. There's a really big difference, right? Some of you hear that verse and it stresses you out because you think Jesus is just trying to add one other thing to your busy, kind of over-scheduled, pressure-filled life. Jesus' promise is a promise of a life of more, but he's not trying to just add another thing on your busy life. He's trying to give you more of the things that I think you probably really want. More joy, more contentment, more peace, more patience, more kindness, more compassion, more margin. That's the kind of life that Jesus is offering, a life of more, not just an add-on, Jesus add-on to our crazy life. Jesus wants to help us with all of our life. And today we're going to talk about how can we live a life of margin so we don't end up stressed out, stretched out, and kind of fizzling out, exploding, in life. How do we make sure that we don't end up that way? Well, we got to have margin. And let me just go ahead and define margin right up front as we begin. I want to give Andy Stanley credit for this definition, great pastor in Atlanta, Georgia. He describes margin this way. Here's his definition, write it down. Margin is the space between my current load and my limits. That's margin. Margin is the gap. Margin is the extra, it's the excess. It's the space between how much I'm doing, how much I can handle. It's the space between how hard I'm charging, how many things are on my schedule, how much money I'm spending, and my limits, right? That's margin. And the truth is, we all have limits, even though we don't like to admit it. You have emotional limits. You have physical limits. You have relational limits, capacities. You have financial limits. Even the credit card companies want you to believe you don't, but there are limits, right? Like you have this much, you can only spend this much. And in every area of life, we don't like to admit that we have limits. And margin is the space between your limit in any area of life and really the way that you're currently living. And you see, the problem is most of us live way too close to the limit all the time, or some of us even over the limit. And we rev our life at the highest RPMs and we go way too hard, way too fast for way too long. And when we do that, the problems, man, they're inevitable. And let me give you a question that I want us all to just reflect on and consider about ourselves when it comes to this topic of margin. As we start this new year, and really we're starting a new decade, I want you just to reflect on your life when it comes to, here's my question I want us all to think about ourselves. I don't want you to elbow the person next to you and say, good thing you came to church today, right? Like you really need this. This is for you. I want you to think about yourself. Here's the question. Is my pace of life draining peace from my life? Is my pace of life draining peace from my life? In other words, is the speed at which I'm living, the busyness that I am doing, the amount of things I'm scheduling for me and my kids and my family, is all the stuff that I'm doing and the way that I'm living, is it bringing me more peace or less? Because I've had to learn a hard lesson this last year. And here's the hard lesson that as I reflect back on 2019, that I see was true about myself this last year. Here was the lesson that I had to learn the hard way, is that as the pace of my life increased, the peace in my life decreased. Because those two things work in tandem in that way. Think of like the scales, right, of Lady Justice, the statue, holding the two scales. You put things on this side, the weight goes down, the other side goes up. That is the way peace and pace will work in your life. And what I saw in my life in 2020 is as the busyness went up on my job here, as opportunities I had to do things outside of here and go speak at this conference and that thing, and as the schedule of my kids' life, my wife and I have one in high school right now, one in middle school, one in grade school. 3 kids, 3 different schools, all 3 in multiple activities. And as I look back, our pace of life increased, but our peace in life decreased. And so what do you have to do? Because you can't think you can just keep adding, and you're gonna have more joy, more peace, more contentment. No. You're gonna have more stress, more pressure, and eventually you're gonna explode just like that balloon. And if we go too hard, too fast for too long, we are in danger of contracting the hurry sickness. Have you heard of the hurry sickness? Do you know that is a real thing? I know it sounds like something I made up, but it's not. It's actually a medical term. It is a medical term. It is a real sickness. And it was discovered by, and the term coined by, a cardiologist, a heart doctor by the name of Henry Friedman. And Dr. Friedman, in his study of heart disease and patients who are the most at risk for heart disease, what he discovered in those most at risk was that they all were living the same kind of lifestyle. And their speed of life and their pace of life is actually what made them sick. And Dr. Friedman described the hurry sickness this way. Here was his definition. He said, hurry sickness is a continuous struggle and unremitting attempt to accomplish or achieve more and more things in less and less time. Now, by definition, how many of you would admit you probably have hurry sickness, right? I mean, isn't that definition the sales pitch of all technology in our culture today? Right? You need to buy this. You need to use this. Why? So you can do more and more in less and less time. And he discovered that's actually what's making people sick. Those who are at the highest risk of heart disease, he discovered all had these characteristics. They were usually type A personalities. They were hard charging in their careers. They were all about being driven and accomplishing and more. Do. Relentless pace, never rest, never vacation, never margin in their life. And their speed of life was actually making them sick. Do you know when Dr. Friedman discovered this and he coined the term hurry sickness? In the mid-1950s. Think about that. In the mid-1950s, he realized that people in our Western American culture were living at too fast of a pace. In the 50s, before the internet, before Amazon one-click purchasing, right? Before email, before smartphones, before email on your phone, so now you can work all the time from home and when you're at the gym and when, right? Before social media, having to kind of be aware of what everybody's doing all the time. Before all of this onslaught of information and opportunity, he said, wow, people are already making themselves sick because of how they're working. The hurry sickness. And so one of the books that I read that I want to recommend to you that I looked at when I was studying for this talk today, everybody look at the bottom of your outline. If you're new around here, with every talk, we recommend resources that go along with what we're talking about. They're books that whoever's speaking reads, studies, articles we look at, all that stuff. And if today's topic, you go, man, I need to read more, do more, learn more, you can always use some of those resources that we studied. One of those is a book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. It is by John Mark Comer. And that book, great book. He's a great author, funny, humorous, poignant, helpful. I totally encourage you to get it. But as I looked at that book, one of the sections of the book, here's what the author does. The author gives 7 warning signs that you probably have hurry sickness. 7 signs that you probably have hurry sickness. And I'll be honest with you, as I read those this week, I realized I have a problem. I was totally convicted, right? Like I read those and I was like, oh dear God, help me. And so because I was so convicted of my sin, I thought I don't want to be alone in that this weekend. I want to share those 7 signs. And hopefully you can recognize your sin and we can all do better together, okay? So here's what I want to do. I want to real quick go through these 7 signs that were in his book that if this is true of you, you might have a case of hurry sickness, okay? So here they are, and we're going to go through them. And again, this isn't when one comes up, you'll look at the person next to you, right? Because you're like, right? Like, no, this eyes forward. This is for you, okay? Evaluate yourself. Here we go. Here's the first one. First sign of hurry sickness, irritability. Irritability, meaning things that actually aren't that big a deal, you make them a really big deal. Little things that you used to be able to kind of ignore and forget, now they're really big things. Like you just have this kind of constant tension and uneasiness about you, and the people around you feel it, and they know it, and they recognize it. Because any little thing could, boom, kind of set you off. And so you just have this kind of irrational irritability about you. Another sign of hurry sickness, he says, is restlessness. Write that in there. Restlessness, meaning you can't really calm your mind or quiet your soul. Right? You've been revving so hard for so long at work, on the job, with all the stresses going on. Some of you, it's because of, taking care of aging parents and problems with your kids and different things. And you've just been doing and going and going. That like you just can't calm yourself. You're tired, but you can't fall asleep. When you do fall asleep, it's not good sleep. You're tossing and you're turning. You wake up and it's still dark. You look at the clock, it's 3:30 in the morning. You're like, oh God, no. Sleep. And they're like, oh crap, I'm awake, right? Like you're just restless. You can't stop. You can't turn it off. Your mind's constantly going. Here's another one, workaholism. This is a big one. Work is just never done. Just one more email, right? Just one more phone call. Hey, honey, I'm sorry. It's just going to be, 1 or 2 more hours on that project after dinner. I'm sorry, but I got to go in on my day off again this week. Now let me be clear. I am all for working hard. And as an employer, I expect it, first of all, of myself, and I expect it for the people who work for me. I expect them to work hard. And I also understand as an employer and as an employee, I understand that there are seasons where you know what? The extra just has to get done. It's not going to be a 40-hour, 9 to 5 thing, because this is that season, this is that project. We got to get it done. And so for this day or this week, or sometimes maybe even a couple weeks, we're kind of pedal to the metal and giving a little bit more at work. I expect that of my team. I expect that of myself in spurts and seasons. The problem is that can't be every day. You can't be doing that every week. You shouldn't be doing that every month. Because what happens is you push, you work, you give, and you give everything you have on that job, to the job, for that season, and then you go home and you got nothing left. And the people in your life are getting the worst version of you. The people you work with got the best version of you. And if you're honest, you're like, that actually wasn't that good either. But the people at home are getting the worst version of you, right? Here's another sign, he says, of hurry sickness. Emotional numbness. Emotional numbness. This is you just have that flat feeling, right? You don't really experience any highs and you don't really even experience any lows because you're so depleted, you got nothing left. You don't really feel anything. Even though you know you should be happy, everything's fine, but you're not. Right? A friend tells you about something negative or really bad that happened to them, and intellectually you have compassion for them, but you feel nothing because you're so depleted. You're just kind of emotionally numb. Here's another sign of hurry sickness. It's neglect of health. Oftentimes when we're stretched to the max like that balloon, when we're so busy and so pressured and overscheduled, the first thing we stop doing is taking care of ourselves. Because we don't have time to exercise. We don't have time to eat right. Sleep 8 hours? Are you serious? Man, I got so much I got to do. I just don't have time for that. And because we're so tired all the time and so depleted, we combat that tiredness by over-caffeinating ourselves to be able to try to have energy and do the job. Some of you, if we were to cut you today, you'd bleed out coffee. Right? We'd be like, whoa, is that dark roast? What is that? Ugh, all right? Dude, your blood's black, man. What's the problem, right? Because you know it, because you're so tired. You overcompensate yourself with caffeine because you just got to keep going. And it puts you in this really bad cycle. And eventually, if you keep doing these things, here's the last two. He says another sign of hurry sickness is escapist behaviors. Escapist behaviors. You try to unwind, but you do it in healthy ways that might satisfy or bring a little relief for a moment, but they leave you more depleted later, right? You overeat. There's a little joy in that, but then you don't feel it later, right? You drink, you overdrink. Because it started with, man, I just got to come home and have a drink to take the edge off. And then that drink or that glass of wine turned into 2. And now it's a whole bottle every night just to take the edge off, right? It could be, escapist behaviors, just mindlessly scrolling through social media for hours. You're not really looking at anything particular. It's just mind-numbing. It could be binge watching Netflix. Right? It's just an escapist. I can't deal with anything else. I can't have any deep, significant conversations with anybody in our family because you got nothing left to give, right? So rather than engage with your spouse in a deep, meaningful conversation because you know you can't, you got nothing left, or to engage with your kids to find out what's going on in their head and their heart because you know you don't have the energy to deal with that, it's just, binge watching something, mindlessly surfing the internet, porn. Could be lots of things that we escapist behavior. And here's what happens. Those things that we justify and say, well, yeah, that's just how I unwind. That's just what I need to relax. They begin to become compulsions that ultimately become habits that control us and lock us up and lock us in, leaving us worse off than when we started. And then here's one more. This one is, if you're a Jesus follower, I know, man, when I get overstretched and overbusy, this one's true of me. Slippage of spiritual practices. Slippage of spiritual practices, meaning the very things that I know will replenish my soul, the very things that will give me strength to deal with the pressures that I'm facing, which is spending time with God in his presence, being renewed by his Spirit. Somehow I lie to myself that I'm too busy for that. Like, I'm just too busy to read God. I don't have time to read the Bible. Like, I don't have time to pray, or I try to pray. I go for a walk. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be a great prayer walk. And about 60 seconds in, I'm like, I wonder what kind of bird that is over there. And it's like, oh yeah, that's right. I was gonna try to pray, right? And you can't keep your mind. And so oftentimes the first thing to go is the very things that can help you the most, right? Like, we don't have time to go to that growth group anymore because the kids have practice every night of the week. So we can't be in community. We don't have time for that growth group, right? The kids are on the travel team. So man, here's what happens. Showing up to church like this, that's now second place, third place, or fourth place on your family priority list. And here's what happens. The very thing, connecting with your Creator. I'm going to show you a passage today where Jesus promises that he will help us with all the stresses and all the pressures of life. And that very thing holds us back and it holds us down. So let's put up all 7 of those real quick, okay? I want us to do a little mass confessional today, all right? Since, here's the thing, since I was convicted and looking at that list, I'm gonna share that feeling with you. So here's what I want you to do. If you'll be honest and say, you know what, as I look at that list, at least 3 of those things apply to me lately. Just honestly, hold your hand up all over the room. All right, look around at all the fellow strugglers. Okay, you can put it down. Let's go a little farther. How many of you would be real honest and go, oh, dang. Like at least 5 of those are true of me. Hold it up. Okay, my last question. Did anybody get a perfect score like I did? 7 out of 7, okay? Unfortunately, that's not winning, friends. That's, okay, we didn't ace the test. Here's the thing, and the reason I bring that up is because I want you to know you're not alone in the struggle. I'm not bringing this subject up today as the champion that's living this out perfectly. Let me tell you how to do this because I'm killing it, Like, no, I'm coming to you today as like the chief of sinners on this subject where I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I let myself get like that in these areas of my life? And so I hope that as you see this, you go, okay, first of all, you're not alone. Because you know what the enemy of your soul and mind tries to make us feel like all the time? When we're struggling, when there's an area of our life where we know we're not winning, he wants us to keep it in secret and in silence. That's what he wants us to do. And think we're the only one. And so today I want you to know, you're not the only one. And I also want you to know that Jesus promises us a better way. There's a better way for us to live when it comes to the hurry sickness. And here's why eliminating hurry is so important in our lives. If you get nothing else today, I hope you get this. Everybody look right here. Why is eliminating hurry so important? Here's why. Because a lifestyle of hurry and a lifestyle of love are incompatible. They cannot go together. A lifestyle of hurry and a lifestyle of love are incompatible. And the reason that's unacceptable for a Christian to live a lifestyle of hurry is because the whole of the Christian life is a life of love. It's a life of love. That's what the whole thing's about. Upwardly, that we would learn how to love God. And as we worship God and recognize him as God and realize we are not, that his love invades our heart and our life, and it begins to heal us and transform us and change us inwardly. So it starts with love upward to God, God towards us. Inwardly, we're changed. And then as that love fills our life, it overflows, not explodes, outwardly to the people around us. This is the whole of the Christian life. And a life of love is incompatible with a life of hurry. So what can we do? How can you get out of the hurry sickness this year? How can you live emotionally whole and healthy this year and be spiritually alive? Because my guess is if you're here today, you want those things. You want to get through this year and say, man, I am healthier this year. Emotionally, man, I have clarity. I'm living out of a deep place of peace and joy and contentment and rest rather than stressed and stretched to the brink of explosion. How can we do that? Here's what I want to do. I want to look at one more passage of scripture. These are some amazing words from Jesus. It's an invitation to live a better way. I want to explain it because there's a little secret in there that Jesus says, and I want to just help you understand it. And then I want to give you 4 questions that are your homework this week, all right? That will help you live with more margin and live better when it comes to this topic. All right, so let's look at the passage. This is a great invitation from Jesus. Here's the words of Jesus in Matthew 11, verse 28 through 30. Here's what Jesus says. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna pause at certain words and go like this, and then you say them out loud, okay? Here we go. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am and humble in heart, and you will find for your souls. For my yoke is and my burden is." Jesus acknowledges something in this passage. There's lots of things in here. But one of the things I love is Jesus acknowledges that life can be hard and life can be heavy. If anybody ever told you that following Jesus would mean you'd never have any problems or challenges in your life, I'm sorry, they lied to you. Because Jesus never promises his followers are removed from the brokenness and the pain that exists in this fallen, broken world. He never promises that in this life. But what Jesus does promise is right there in the middle of that passage. Dallas Willard, a great philosophy professor and leader of Christian thought, he called it the secret of the easy yoke. It's right in the middle of the passage. And I want to explain it to you. Because we live in a modern world, we're not an ancient farming culture. Probably most of you, when you heard the word yoke, you thought of the middle of an egg. That is spelled Y-O-L-K, okay? Jesus said, take my yoke. He wasn't like, Jesus wants me to crack an egg on my head, right? No. Take my yoke upon you, Y-O-K. All right, what is a yoke? I'm going to show you a picture of one. It is an ancient farming tool that was used thousands of years ago at the time of Jesus, and it is still used today to keep 2 oxen held together. You can go ahead and put that picture up. And it's a tool that is used to keep 2 oxen together when plowing a field or pulling a cart or pulling a wagon. And a yoke only has 2 purposes, and it does 2 things. First of all, it sets the pace for both oxen, meaning it makes sure that they have to walk together. One can't get out in front and one can't get in behind. They have to keep pace one with another. The second thing a yoke does is it distributes the weight. That way, one oxen isn't bearing the burden alone of pulling the plow or pulling the cart or pulling the weight of the cart or the plow, but they share that burden together. Now that we understand what Jesus was saying, do you see the power of his invitation? What Jesus is saying, he's saying, yoke your life up to me, shoulder to shoulder. Learn how to walk with me. Learn how to do life with me at my pace, Jesus says, not yours. Because the promise is that if we will learn how to walk with Jesus, learning to live in his ways, this is the great promise, is that he promises to carry our burdens and our challenges and our stresses and our worries with us. That's what Jesus is promising. That you don't have to carry the stress of that job by yourself. You don't have to carry the worry of that child all by yourself. You don't have to carry all that. Jesus is like, if you will yoke up with me, if you will link your life up to me, and you will let me lead and let me guide, we will learn to walk this together. He will carry some of that burden. This is the promise of Jesus. And don't you want that this year? I mean, don't you want to walk with Jesus instead of getting way out in front of him? Because here's the thing. If you get way out in front of Jesus or you're hanging way behind him, all that burden, all that weight is on you by yourself. But Jesus is saying, walk with me, do life with me, and you don't have to carry all that alone. So I want to give you 4 questions that before your calendar fills up this year, or before you just keep living the same way this year that you did last year, how can you live better? Everybody reach in the seat back in front of you and get a little business card. I put one in every seat. I didn't actually put them there, our team did. But everybody, this is my gift to you as we start this new year. Everybody, some of you are like, I'll let my wife grab that for me. No, sir. Go ahead and get yours out. I know it's really hard to get. Like, woo! Don't wear yourself out, okay? Go ahead and get that. I want every person to have one, okay? And here's the thing. You'll see there's plus sign, minus sign, greater than, less than sign. There's 4 questions on one side, and on the other side, there's 4 lines. You're going to write your answer to each of those questions on the lines that correspond. So the plus sign. What is one thing you need to add to your schedule this year? I'll tell you what I wrote down on mine. Exercise. It's one of the things that I just too busy for that, right? And it's like, no, I'm going to add that in. Now, it's going to be different for all of us. Maybe you're going to add in Bible in 1 year app, right? We want you to be intentionally with God this year. Would you read the Bible every day? Let me tell you, the point of reading the Bible is not the Bible, not just to get to know more Bible stuff. The point of reading the Bible is to discover the God of the Bible who loves you and has a plan for your life. That you begin to see how God works in those stories and you start to believe that he'll work in your life too. That's the point. So maybe you'd write down, hey, I'm going to read scripture. I'm going to make coming to church every weekend a priority. What's something you need to add to your life? But we don't just want to keep adding and adding and adding, because what's going to happen if we do, right? Our life's going to get stretched out and max. So the second question is this: what is one thing you need to subtract? What's one thing you need to subtract? Right? I mean, for some of you, maybe it would be, you know what, social media. I spend way too much time mindlessly scrolling through there. I need to subtract that this year. Maybe for you, you would go, man, we got every kid in multiple activities. We're going to subtract one sport or one commitment or one activity, right? We're going to subtract some travel. Way too many nights away last year. Like, I don't know what it is. What is it for you? And then on the other side, the greater than symbol, what is one thing you'd like more of this year? Here's what I wrote down: more time with my wife. Between her work schedule, my work schedule, our 3 kids that are in 3 different activities, like, we were around each other this year, but we weren't together a whole lot this year. And so I said, you know what, that's something I want to be more intentionally about. It's been a while since we did date nights. We need to get back on track with that this year. What is it for you? Maybe you would say, man, I want to add reading more books, more dinners at home together, right? Like what is it going to be for you? And then the last one is the less than symbol. What is one thing you'd like less of this year? Less eating out, less social media, less, I don't know what it is. It's going to be different for every one of us depending on our life and our life stage. Here's what I want you to do though. Some of you know those answers right up front. This is your homework. Think about it. Pray about it. If you're married, talk about it together. And I've made it in like a wallet size. I want you to put it in your wallet. I want you to put it in your purse. I want you to put it on your mirror. I want you to put it on your desk. And I want this to be your checkup, right? About once a month, pull this baby out and go, man, how am I doing with the things I said were some of the most important changes I wanted to make this year? Here's what I know. If we all just did these 4 things that we came up with for ourselves, and how much better would 2020 be than 2019? I know for me, it'd be a lot better if I did the 4 things on my card. So that's your homework. What are you going to do to live in step, yoked up with Jesus? Go ahead and put that in your purse or in your pocket. I don't want you to lose that. Once you do that, would you go ahead and stand with me? I'm going to invite the band to come back out. We are going to close with a great prayer. This is a song, but it's really a prayer. The title of the song is called Make Room, and it's really, we chose it on purpose as a theme song for this series, Life Plus. Because as we start 2020, we want to make more room to be with God this year than we did last year. As a church, we want to do that, and as individuals, we want to do that. And so as they lead us in this song, I want to invite you to sing. I want to invite you to say the words out loud. They'll be on the screen. And make this your prayer, that this year you'll make more room for God to do his good work in you. God has such good plans for you this year. He has so many things he wants to do in your life. This is the year he wants you to overcome that. This is the year he wants you to be set free from that addiction. This is the year he wants you to have clarity about your future. This is the year he wants to set you free from that depression. He wants to restore that relationship. He has such good things. And if we would make just a little more room in our life, I believe he can accomplish it. So let's make this our prayer. Then I'll come back after that and dismiss us. Let me pray for us. Jesus, I thank you that you invite those who are tired and weary and burdened down in life to come to you and get rest. You don't invite us to come to you so you can wag an angry finger in our face and say, I told you so. You invite us to come to you and get rest and get peace and receive forgiveness and grace so we can have the strength and the wisdom to move forward and to learn how to walk with you. And so God, this song is our prayer, that we would make room for you, that our life wouldn't be so busy and so overscheduled and so overcrowded that you're an afterthought. Jesus, we're inviting you into the center of our lives. The center of our lives, Lord. And so we sing this as our prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.